What's going on, everybody? This is the Shonee Jackson Show. Thanks for tuning in again. Today, as I said on Mondays or the early weeks episode, is going to be the college football day, or in general, the college day, college sports day of my podcast. I'm going to do the pros early in the week and the college kids later in the week. And so we're going to get into, the college football news leading up to the football season this year, talk about some coaches and other things. And first and foremost, let's get right into last week's news, and that's that Brent Venables got a contract extension. It made a lot of news and headlines. Obviously, any type of contract extension at a major program in college football is always going to do that. But that's not really the biggest reason I think that made so many headlines. I think the biggest reason is nobody saw it coming. And why did nobody see it coming? That's because it was totally unnecessary. And obviously, in the Shonee Jackson show, we're never going to mince words about Oklahoma or play the nice guy game that I think a lot of people in the industry are playing when talking about this contract extension. I understand where, one, I think that there's a lot of people that don't want to lose access that they have to the Oklahoma football program or any other football program. So there's a line that you won't step over when being critical of certain programs in college football, right? But I don't think that there's really any logical sense that you can give to me that says that this was a necessary hire. And if you want to give Oklahoma the benefit of the doubt, because what they did throughout the 2 decades of Bob Stoops, basically, and if you want to include Lincoln Riley as a branch off of that, pretty much, which I kind of do, um, that's fine. Give them the benefit of the doubt because they hit with Bob Stoops. And I hear people saying, they just don't miss with coaches, and the stability at Oklahoma is what's really important, and that's why they're doing this. Well, they had stability. He's not going anywhere. Nobody was going to hire him. Nobody's knocking down the doors to hire Brent Venables as their head coach right now, right? And also, I think that there's a lot of comparison that I see on Twitter and elsewhere on the socials, and even friends of mine that support the Oklahoma program that do too much comparing to Lincoln Riley. And want to say that part of the reason of this extension is what he's doing compared to Lincoln Riley, and how Oklahoma feels that their program is on the same setting, if not in a better trajectory, than what USC is under Lincoln Riley so far since he left Oklahoma to go there. Well, first and foremost, I don't know that that's true. We're going to see. I don't like Lincoln Riley just as much as you guys don't, probably. I don't think he's a very likable coach. I think he's a pretty deplorable human being, to be quite frank. But that said, if Lincoln Riley figures out how to just play decent defense and tackle, which he's clearly said this offseason that is first and foremost the priority at USC right now, and he's changed his practice philosophies and everything that was a cancer to his defenses since he was at Oklahoma. He's saying all the right things and implicating that he's changing his ways and focusing on developing an elite defensive program there at USC, right? If he's able to do that or even come close to that, they're going to be dominant. USC is very, very resourceful, and still here in 2024, there's not people that can really put up points the way that Lincoln Riley does as fast as he does. Once he gets in rhythm and he finds a quarterback, it's pretty unstoppable, right? So I don't necessarily know that the trajectory of the program at Oklahoma is better than what it is at USC, but I digress on that point. What I'm saying is stop comparing what y'all are doing to Lincoln Riley. Forget about Lincoln Riley. Lincoln Riley left you guys. It's over. He had one of the best runs in the history of the program. Okay, you haven't won a national championship post 9/11. So really, conference championships is what you have to hang your hat on at Oklahoma. They got all the conference championship banners in the world. For whoever out there in college football wants to talk about the fucking 2013 Big 12 champions, like that's going to be a thing 10, 20 years from now, Oklahoma's that. They had a 7-year run under Lincoln Riley that was admired, celebrated as it should be, right? With all the conference championships at Oklahoma on levels that I've never seen celebration come out of with the program otherwise, even in the Bob Stoops days. They loved Lincoln Riley. I think people were naming their sons Lincoln, their dogs Lincoln. Lincoln Riley was absolutely adored. Therefore, the hurt has been long standing since he's gone, and I don't know if it's ever going to go away. But I don't think that you should give a contract extension compared to a guy that you're not going to play anytime soon. That's an entirely different conference, doing an entirely different thing. And what I think you should be worrying about at Oklahoma is all the SEC coaches that you need to be comparing against. Is Brent Venables first and foremost better than Steve Sarkisian? I think that a lot of people in Norman, Oklahoma, obviously are going to say that they think so. And they believe in whatever it is that he's done as a fucking coordinator to now as a head coach, more so than what Steve Sarkisian has proven. But the rest of the world does not think so. So there's your first and your biggest rival, your biggest competition, and the biggest coach and program that you need to be comparing yours to before anybody else, right? And then, is he better than Kirby Smart? Absolutely the fuck not. That's at the top of the list. Is he better than Kalen Deboer? I don't think so. Kalen Deboer is like 104 and 12 as a head football coach. I'm going to get into the Alabama program later in this show, but he's not better than those three guys. Is he better than Brian Kelly? I don't think anyone thinks that. Is he better than Lane Kiffin? I don't think anyone thinks that. Is he better than Elijah Drinkwitz at Missouri? The guy that's beat Oklahoma in some major head-to-head recruiting battles. Oklahoma, you're losing to Missouri throughout the Brent Venables era in recruiting. And you can point at NIL and money whipping, and whatever excuses you want to make for losing head-to-head battles to Missouri. Could never beat Texas. We just went in and got the best player in their state last year in Ryan Wingo in a head-to-head battle with the in-state school Missouri, where I think he has family or brothers that have played there, right? So it could never be Texas, but Oklahoma can't beat Missouri in recruiting battles right now, and they're giving an unnecessary extension through 2029 to Brent Venables. That's the way I feel about it, right? Let's go on deeper throughout the list. Is he better than Josh Heupel, the last quarterback to win a national championship at Oklahoma? The guy that, quite frankly, when I was thinking about Oklahoma and the possibility that I thought was legit and real, that if there was a truly disappointing season at Oklahoma, and after I go through this list of coaches, I'll go through their schedule this year and then talk a little bit about their year last year and try to wrap it up and move on to the next topic. But as I was thinking about the next potential head coach, if the Brent Venables experiment didn't work out, which I just don't think it's going to, even a week after the extension. And I understand I fucking hate Oklahoma. I want that program to crash and burn. This isn't a rant on the Oklahoma program like you idiots in Oklahoma are going to take it and think that I'm threatened by Oklahoma. I'm honestly just being unbiased and genuine about the situation. I think it's fucking stupid. I'm going to keep going through this list. Josh Heupel is coming to Oklahoma in week 3. And I guess I can get into it now. I was going to get into it when I go through Oklahoma's schedule. But that's going to be the, oh, fuck, did we just make a terrible decision moment, I think, this season and early. It's the very first SEC football game to kick off the season for Oklahoma and Tennessee. The return of Josh Heupel coming home. He has turned around the Tennessee program that has been dead for the majority of my lifetime. Year one, right away, had some uber success. Did he go to the SEC championship? I think Tennessee did go to the SEC championship. Regardless, that's not the point. He had a ton of success. They're always going to be explosive offensively. They have a 5-star quarterback that comes out of the same recruiting class that Oklahoma's 5-star quarterback, Josh Arnold, came out of, and that Texas, Arch Manning, was number 1 in that class. But I think On 3 actually moved Nico ahead of Arch Manning. And so you got right away, you got a head-to-head matchup with your 5-star quarterback future of your program versus the head-to-head of Tennessee's future 5-star quarterback, and Nico, not going to butcher his last name, superstar, right? So you're automatically going to get a comparison to the most important position in football, in sports, arguably, at quarterback, out of the class that you guys had your guy that's supposed to represent Oklahoma and be the future Heisman contending, leading conference championship QB that you guys want him to be, versus Tennessee's. So what if Nico's better, which I think he is, and I think he will be. And not to be too harsh on the bowl game, I understand a true freshman does true freshman things, but going back to high school, the one issue that Jackson Arnold has is that he's slow to process things, slow to process coverage. When he got beat deep in the playoffs in Texas high school football, that's what teams were able to do to him. I'm not saying he didn't have big games. He was a big, powerful, imposing high school football player that could run through a lot of high school athletes. But as a passer, where he struggled in those games, and the reason he's ranked behind Arch Manning and other players in that class like Nico was because he's slow at processing and going through his progressions and coverage. He's not running that fear and shoot bullshit anymore. I don't necessarily know exactly what their plans are offensively, but in the SEC, you're going to have to process things fast as a passer if you're going to be the best in the conference, right? If you're going to be the cream of the crop. So right away, that's going to be a problem. If Tennessee comes in and beats Oklahoma with a coach that I think Oklahoma should have been circling and targeting, now they're not going to be able to for a few years because Oklahoma's not beating the broke claims with jumping and impulsively extending Brent Venables in this situation. They're not beating the broke claims that they're going to continue to lose recruiting battles to schools like Missouri and others. So we'll see. I don't think he's better than Josh Heupel, though. Mark Stoops, yeah, maybe. Maybe he's the same type of guy. Mike Elko, I don't know. Mike Elko is obviously a great, great defensive mind. He did a better job at Duke than what Brent Venables has done as a head coach at Oklahoma. I'll get into his 10-win season right after this, but Mike Elko so far as a head coach, I think, has done better and a more impressive job at a lesser program at Duke, where nobody ever wins at, than what Brent Venables has done, which is why he got the job at Texas A&M. And Mike Elko has a better roster at A&M than what Oklahoma has this year. So, and an easier football schedule. So we're going to see. Shane Beamer, Brent Venables better than Shane, that fucking dork. Hugh Freeze, I don't know. Hugh Freeze, I'm very interested to see how that goes. They play early. I think it goes Tennessee, then Auburn on the Oklahoma football schedule. Yeah. But Hugh Freeze is an interesting case. I don't know. I got time to get into him. You know, for a guy that got into trouble for breaking all the rules in his stint at Ole Miss and paying players and doing all kinds of other shit, the story's well documented. I don't know that he loves this NIL era, and I don't know that he's going to thrive in it. So we're going to see on Hugh Freeze. Sam Pittman, dead man walking. Jeff Lebby, maybe the worst coach in the conference, but that was Brent Venables' first offensive coordinator hire. I know you guys love the bash. Art Briles' little son-in-law here, now that he's gone, because that's what Oklahoma does. And Oklahoma fans' favorite fucking thing to do is bash former coaches and then brag about what their former coaches did. They do it about Lincoln Riley every day of the week. Anytime you get on Oklahoma Twitter, or you see an Oklahoma podcast or an Oklahoma clip of any sort from anybody that represents the University of Oklahoma, they love to bash Lincoln Riley and how they don't need him and they're happy that he's gone. And then the next sentence will be them bragging about all the success they had with Lincoln Riley, right? But that's the IQ of people in the fucking state of Oklahoma. Mississippi ain't any better. Jeff Lebby, they just consistently have what I think is the worst coach in the conference year in, year out. Billy Napier, dead man walking. Clark Lee at Vanderbilt, who cares? So there's at least, let's see, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 coaches currently in the SEC that I think is better than Brent Venables. I think they're going to continue to be better on the football field. I think that those coaches will recruit better than what Brent Venables does. And I think that 10 years from now, a lot of those guys will still be at these respective programs or lateral programs like it if they just take another job. And Brent Venables will not be at Oklahoma as soon as they're able to afford that buyout. I think that's the direction that this is going. Let's get into their schedule this year. They open up the season against Temple, Houston, and Tulane in the non-conference. Oklahoma typically and historically has a fart and fall down game in the non-conference. If that happens, I think it's Houston. Houston has a quarterback that I think when he gets in rhythm, the ball stops touching the ground and he can be pretty dangerous. But we'll see. And I just want to see if their rosters are able to overwhelm teams in the non-conference the way it should if it's going to compete in the SEC. And like I said, that first game against Tennessee in Norman, the return home of Josh Heupel, that's going to be a very fun game. I got circled. Can't wait to watch it. That's huge, man. As an Oklahoma fan, if you lose that game and say you lose it by 10 or more points, say the Tennessee offense is just humming on a different level than what y'all's is, and the quarterback play at Tennessee is just better than what y'all's is. That's scary. That's scary because it doesn't get any better after that. And quite frankly, that's a coach that I think really was the peak level hire that Oklahoma could have hired beyond Brent Venables in this era. I think it was realistic. He went to the University of Oklahoma. I'm sure he loves the University of Oklahoma. Ain't happening anytime soon now, if ever. The Auburn game, I don't know. Auburn's got a lot of really young, good football players, but this is a game that Oklahoma should win, and they need to be better than Auburn. I think Auburn is still a year away. You're in year 3 with Oklahoma. You're coming off a 10-win season that the entire program and fan base is bragging about. You have to win this game in Auburn, Alabama, before you play your heated rival against Texas, which I think might be an absolute fucking humiliating stomping. All right, let's just talk quickly off the top of my head why I think so. Let's do a basic position for position conversation. Quinn Ewers is on another planet than Jackson Arnold right now. You fucking dorks in Oklahoma can say whatever you want to say and find whatever reason and excuse to think otherwise. Quinn Ewers is on a different planet. He's got the second best odds to win the Heisman. I think he does win the Heisman. I think he's loaded with talent and weapons surrounding him. But more importantly, he has the best or the second best offensive line in America. It's going to show in that game. It's going to show all season long. And our running game will be dominant as well. I think Quinn Ewers is going to go bonkers. And this is really the first. We play Michigan week 2. We have some showcase games, but this game being the game after losing last year, us having some shit to be pissed off about, will be a real showcase game if he can go out and just stomp Oklahoma with 45 points or something like that. I think it's very, very much in the works. You got guys that are returning this year because they weren't good enough to make it to the NFL last year. That got tattoos after the game last year, sold stupid ass T-shirts, did all kinds of stuff, right? Then went on and embarrassed themselves shortly thereafter. We haven't forgotten in Austin, and although we have a lot bigger fucking fish to fry than Oklahoma, I think that that's a major loss. That's at least their second loss of the season. Got them losing to Tennessee, and then they got South Carolina. Got to beat South Carolina, and Norman, former Oklahoma assistant, and Shane Beamer coming to coach that game. Ole Miss could be ugly. I think Ole Miss in Oxford slaps Oklahoma around. Man, Ole Miss is a very, very good roster. A lot of great transfers. Obviously, when there's a lot of transfers, there is a question mark for how the culture establishes itself. It has to move quick, but I think it does. I think Lane Kiffin is perfect for that. I think he's a perfect coach at Ole Miss, and that's a perfect game for Lane Kiffin to just show out and stomp fucking Oklahoma. And they play Maine. Who cares? Missouri. Interesting little chippy battle here. On the college football socials, Missouri and Oklahoma have been going at it the last few years. They're relatively close in distance. Now apparently they're going to be rivals in the recruiting world, right? Missouri's coming after a lot of the same players that Oklahoma's going after, and Missouri's been winning those recruiting battles. So we'll see what that looks like, man. You got to go to Columbia. That's going to be a tough fucking game late in the season, right before the Alabama game in Norman. You finish the season with Alabama and LSU. I have a lot of questions about LSU, so I don't know. That's going to be an interesting game. And really, the only questions I have about LSU exist on the interior defensive line, the same issues they had last year. It can't fucking get worse, but the problem is, although they have made a lot of great defensive hires, and I think that improves everything just naturally, they didn't add the players they needed to add. So I worry about that. But I don't know that Oklahoma's going to have this dominant running game or a good offensive line. There's a lot of questions there, so it might be a moot point. And that's in Baton Rouge in Louisiana. Don't know what time that game will be played. Depends on the teams at that point in time. But that's going to be a tough game, and they're going to lose to Alabama. I'm going to get to Alabama after I talk about Texas, but Alabama is not going anywhere, man. They're going to be really good under Kalen Deboer. So I got them losing at least 1, 2, 3, 4 games, 5 games. I got them losing 5 games. I think they lose to Missouri as well. And then between LSU, South Carolina, Auburn, and Houston, they're going to lose one of those as well. In my opinion. And that's, I fucking hate Oklahoma, but I think that's realistic. A very realistic possibility, and with that being a very realistic possibility, and with me ranking whatever I said 6, 7, 8 coaches that could be better than what your coach is in the SEC right now, that's not to mention the coaches like the other coaches around the country. Fucking drawing a blank. What's the Oregon guy's name? I got it written down here. Dan Lanning, Ryan Day. Maybe Lincoln Riley. It's not. Lincoln Riley is a lot more successful as a head coach than Brent Venables is, and at Oklahoma than what Brent Venables is. Just all the up and coming coaches around the country that are really, really good. I think when you're looking at giving your coach a contract extension, he needs to be at least in the top 5 of that. If you're doing that, when you truly view yourself as a blue blood program that wants to win national championships. I went over their schedule this year. Let's end this conversation with their 10-win season last year, understanding the point that you're going to say 10 wins in year 2 is very impressive, and it is. No matter what, it's impressive, right? But they played 3 cupcakes that they got off to a hot start. 4 or 5 cupcakes, really, because Cincinnati and Iowa State were not good last year, especially Cincinnati. They got off to a hot 6-0 start, including the Texas game, the Red River fluke, if you will. Their Super Bowl. They won that. They immediately turned around and almost lost to a bad Central Florida team. Should have lost to a bad Central Florida team. Then they lost to Kansas. For the years of shit talk about Texas losing games to Kansas and Oklahoma never losing to Kansas, they lost the last game that they're going to play them in the Big 12. And I would ask you, is he better than Lance Leipold? Is Brent Venables better than Lance Leipold? I don't think so. As a head coach, their resumes don't even fucking compare. And will Lance Leipold make the playoffs and win a conference or get to a conference championship before Brent Venables? I understand the task is a lot harder than the SEC, but those are the cards y'all are dealt, baby. You chose that life. Oklahoma chose the SEC life, and I don't think that they really grasp the understanding of what it is. So to complain about Missouri money whipping you, everybody in the SEC is going to money whip. Let's move on. They lost the last game. They're going to play the Oklahoma State in the Bedlam rivalry. Is he better than Mike Gundy? I don't think so. They beat the piss out of West Virginia. They struggled against a bad Brenham Young team. They scored 69 against TCU, but they gave up 45 points. They give up 38 to Arizona in the bowl game. A lot of turnovers. Jackson Arnold was shitty. They lost that game. Is he better than the Arizona coach? Not the one that left and got a job, but even the guy they got now. I don't know. It's interesting. I think they jumped the gun. I think Oklahoma's jumping the gun. I think that their perspective from even their fan base to the program and the people leading the program, it's not clear and the way I think it needs to be. I don't think that they're running their program the way that Texas, Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State, Oregon, even USC, who else? Anybody. Name any. I'll pull up the national championship odds just to have them up. But the way the best programs in the country, Michigan, are running their schools, I don't think Oklahoma's running their schools the same way. I think that's where you get the Nebraska 2.0 comparisons. There's another coach for you, Matt Rule, that I think's better than Brent Venables. That's where you get that. And I actually think Nebraska might have a brighter future under Matt Rule in the way they're moving and with their quarterback, Dylan Raiola, than what Oklahoma has right now. So, I don't know. You tell me. You tell me what you think, Oklahoma fans, non-Oklahoma fans. I think they jumped the gun. I think that people are being a little bit too nice. Not that others aren't being critical, but within the sports college football content space, people are being nice, and there's no reason to be nice about it. This could absolutely be a humiliating disaster. And if it doesn't work, and Texas is thriving, competing for national championships, you may be fucked here in the SEC in a world with Texas, Georgia, Alabama, LSU, and others competing for national championships year in, year out with more resources, not only financially, but in talent-rich states that Oklahoma is not. In these states that you have to compete for your players for, recruiting-wise, I don't know that that's going to be an appealing job because it wasn't the last time that it was up for when Lincoln Riley left. It wasn't that appealing of a job, which is why you landed on Brent fucking Venables. And I don't think it's going to be any more of an appealing job when he gets fired and you're looking up at all these SEC powers with resources, money, and more talent than you have in your state. So, it's interesting. It's interesting. Let's move forward. Let's talk about Texas for a little bit. Their recent success, recruiting momentum, waves, recent commitments. They just got another offensive lineman commitment last night. There's tons of rumors with multiple 5-stars in this class that are all but locked into the University of Texas. The Longhorns have a chance to sign the greatest receiving class in program history and possibly of all time, with 3 potential 5-stars in Deboer Moore, Jamie French, and Khalil Lockett. Deboer Moore is all but done from what I'm reading, hearing, and seeing across the socials, recruiting websites, and obviously inside the Texas program with what I keep up with a lot and closely. So I think Deboer Moore is all but done. I think Jamie French is damn near all but done. He might extend his decision a little bit longer. He still has an LSU visit, which I think is our competition in that recruitment. Khalil Lockett, I think we definitely lead for, but that might be a Texas-Alabama battle down the line. Right? So, let me see. My notes kind of went away there. Lost service. They have a ton of recruiting momentum. Right now in the On3 recruiting industry rankings, they rank 15th, but they only have 12 commitments. For instance, Oklahoma is currently 12th, but they have 17 commitments. Texas's big fish in this recruiting class are all pretty much uncommitted, and I think that we lead for damn near every single one of them. Michael Fusasi, the 5-star tackle, is a heavy Texas lean. That could be a commitment very soon. We got a quarterback committed already. We could take another one. You got KJ Lacey currently committed. So, you're bringing in a 5-star tackle, 3 potential 5-star wide receivers, a highly ranked quarterback, which we do every single year, and then some weapons along the edge. We're addressing the interior defensive line. We will get some good secondary players, good linebackers like always. Texas is positioning itself to have its first number one recruiting class in the country under Steve Sarkisian so far, right? Um, Not only that, but like I said, they got a lot of marquee games coming in this season. So Texas is going to be the talk of the country, not only like they are this offseason, but they will be throughout the entirety of the season. And I think that they'll be ranked between 1 and 3 from week 1 all the way to the start of the college football playoffs, right? They open up the season against Colorado State at home, but then week 2, we go to Ann Arbor to play the defending national champions. Let me see if I have the Longhorns schedule pulled up already. Let me pull it up. It's in at 30 minutes, damn near. We have the second best odds to win the SEC. We have the third best odds to win the national championship behind Georgia and Ohio State. Quinn Ewers, as I said earlier, is the second best odds to win the Heisman, and my pick to win the Heisman. We're loaded with weapons. You got Isaiah Bond, Matthew Golden, and Silas Bolden that's transferred in this year to add to what we've already been developing, and former 5-star Jonte Cook, for me highly rated top 150 player, and DeAndre Moore, who are all developing really well. And then this year's freshman class that came in, and Ryan Wingo, who could be one of the best receivers on the team as a true freshman. The kid I said that we got out of St. Louis, Missouri, one of the top receivers in the country a year ago. Who is coming in flying. He had a massive spring game. We got the best quarterback room in the country. We got one of the best secondaries in the country. Honestly, one of the more underrated secondaries in the country, in my opinion. We definitely boosted our edge rushing this year. We lost 2 of the best, if not the 2 best interior defensive linemen in America last year. So naturally, you have to assume we take a step back there. And yet we have plenty of talent there with guys like Alfred Collins, Vernon Broughton coming back their senior year. And that is a grown man position where, just like the guys the year before, typically your best year in the interior of the defensive line is going to come either your junior, senior, or redshirt senior year. That's just a grown man position where you're playing the strongest players in the country along the offensive line, right? So don't be surprised if those 2 guys just automatically play at a really high level. Plus, we brought in some transfers for depth like Bill Norton there. But where I think we're going to be really, really boosted is at the linebacker position. We had good linebacker play last year with Jalen Ford and David Benda. David Benda returns as a senior, but we have all-world superstar Anthony Hill Jr., who I think has the potential to be a top 5, top 10 draft pick in the NFL 2 years from now. Anthony Hill Jr. is going to take the world by storm. I think Derek Williams will be, as his first year starting, most likely, will be one of the best safeties in the SEC this year and next year. So the future at Texas is incredibly bright, incredibly bright. Let's talk about some of their marquee games. As I said, the defending national champions in week 2 against Michigan. That's probably going to be the best defensive line we play all year. It's going to come out. It'll be tough in the first half, but I think Texas will overwhelm them with talent. Our quarterback play is just going to be a lot better. I think our coaching, our play calling is going to be better. No disrespect. I love Big Blue. That's like my stepchild team. Always has been. Them in Florida State. But I think Texas beats Michigan by more than 10 points. Makes a little bit of a statement. We blow out, and then this is the stretch of games leading up to the massive Georgia game, which I think is the biggest game in college football this season. This is the stretch of games where I think we blow teams the fuck out of the water, and we make statements not only to be the number 1 team in the country, but for Quinn Ewers to be the overwhelming Heisman favorite. I think we're going to be going gangbusters against this team. Like I mentioned earlier, we might have the best offensive line unit in America, and it's really going to show in the stretch against UTSA, ULM, Mississippi State, and Oklahoma. Right, I'm going to pull up the schedule on the screen for YouTube. The Oklahoma game, I think we stomp them. I already talked about it. I'm not going to talk about it anymore. I think we fucking stomp them. And then the Georgia game. This is the biggest game of the year in college football, in my opinion. October 19th in Austin, Texas. It's going to be electric. Georgia travels well. The atmosphere is going to be badass. I cannot wait to see what the SEC at tailgating atmosphere takes Austin to. Chris Del Conte and the administration have already done a phenomenal job taking the tailgating and overall game day experience at Texas to a whole nother level, and I think it gets a steroid shot in the SEC. Sorry, that week against Georgia is going to be amazing. And this is the battle for number one in the country. And also, I think that this becomes one of the premier, if not premier, rivalries in college football. Texas and Georgia are not going to play every year, but what Alabama and Georgia have been for the better part of the last 5 or 6 years since Kirby Smart got to Georgia, that's what I think Texas and Georgia are about to be. And I'm going to get into Alabama. I don't think they're getting anywhere, but I think year in, year out, not only will you see Texas and Georgia competing for the SEC championship and maybe playing each other in that game, as now it's just going to be number one versus number two in the SEC, and there's not East versus West. I think you'll see that game in Atlanta be played often. I think they'll be competing for the number one recruiting class in the country year in, year out. And I think that they'll be competing for the national championship year in, year out. Also, I think year in, year out, you'll see Texas and Georgia at the top of the list of players drafted. They're in two of the richest, if not the richest, talent-rich states in America when it comes to high school recruiting talent in football. They're both very, very resourceful, and they're arguably 1 and 2 the best places to go to college. Athens, Georgia is arguably number one when you're talking about just overall college towns and getting a complete college experience. And then Texas is like living in Hollywood, man. It's like being a pro athlete, a celebrity. There's celebrities galore between actors, musicians, all kinds of other people and talent in this city. You can really blend in very well, live a very fun, awesome life. Austin is the best city in America right now. It's where everybody comes for their bachelorette trips. Austin is Austin. So it just makes all the sense in the world that Georgia and Texas are colliding to really be at the top of the SEC in the college football world and battle it out. Kirby Smart versus Sark, two young guys that aren't going anywhere in college football. And then after that game, Texas follows up against Vanderbilt. Maybe the worst team in the SEC, but that's your typical, you play your biggest rival, and then you play your biggest game on the schedule. This could be one of those games at halftime that's a 6-point game or a tie game before we pull away. Then we play Florida. I don't know if Billy Napier still has a job at this point. We blow him out. You'll see Arch Manning in this game. Will be interesting to see DJ Legway starting at that point. I think he probably will be. Kid out of Wiley, the Houston area. Texas didn't really offer him. It's not really a Sark type guy, but he was a 5-star quarterback. He was the best quarterback in the state. I think he's going to have a phenomenal career at Florida. That'll be interesting. Maybe he makes some noise in that game. And then the rekindling of the rivalry, going back to Fayetteville, Arkansas, where we got humiliated a few years ago. In Sark's first season, that team was not ready for what that atmosphere was going to be with Texas coming back into Arkansas, who hates Texas, by the way. We weren't ready for the atmosphere, and we weren't ready for this physicality and experience and the size that Arkansas team had now in 2021, right? We are fucking ready for it now. We're more than ready, and I think that we slap around a team that also might not have their head coach at that point in time. Another dead man walking in the Arkansas program in Sam Pittman, right? And that's a little bit of a revenge game. There's players on this team that were a part of that program. And I think we go in and we slap them around and whoop their ass real properly. And then we play Kentucky, Mark Stoops. Maybe they have a good defense. Maybe it's low scoring, but we should beat them by more than 10. And then the insanely epic return of the Texas A&M rivalry. The atmosphere is going to be epic and insane. This is the biggest game in the history of the Texas A&M program. It's rekindling what I think will be the biggest in-state rivalry in college football again. I think that, quite frankly, this game is going to surpass and this isn't, these next few sentences I'm going to say, I get it. I'm a Texas Longhorns fan. I don't give a fuck that it's biased. I think it's also true. This will be the biggest in-state rivalry in college football. It'll surpass the Iron Bowl by far. The two programs obviously hate each other. We're very fucking close to each other. And A&M's better, and they're going to have better rosters than they've ever had before. But I think it'll surpass that. It's a funner game. It'll captivate the nation, and I think Texas OU will be the biggest rivalry in the SEC. But anyways, this game is exciting. It's going to be big. It's going to be tough to go into that environment and win no matter what. A&M, I think, has the potential to be a 10-win team at this point because their schedule's not very hard. They have a very, very favorable schedule, and they got a good roster. I think Mike Elko will have a very good defense. I don't know what they'll be offensively. They need Connor Weigman to stay healthy. They need to finish a year, start to finish, with a starting quarterback, or at least get 10, 11 games out of one. And if so, they could be a 10-win team here competing for playoff spots and maybe even more. And also, of course, The Aggies want to ruin anything that the Longhorns are competing for, whether it be the SEC championship, whether it be Quinn Ewers Heisman, any of that. They live to do that shit. So it'll be electric, and it'll be a chance for Quinn Ewers and company to solidify everything that is already established. I say that to finish it off with, Sarkisian has established a fantastic fucking culture at Texas so far. It's you can feel it. You can feel it in the city. It goes beyond the football program. You feel the energy of the football program throughout the city of Austin. I live here, and I have my own whole life. It's different, really, than it ever has been. I think recruiting wise, he's setting us up to do things that we've never done. And obviously, the Matt Brown stretch was the greatest stretch of recruiting the program has ever had. It was one of the greatest. He's one of the greatest recruiters ever. Mac Brown is. Sarkisian, I think, is set to surpass that. I think that he's set to really become the dominant program in college football up there with Georgia, with Ohio State, and the others that are competing for that. But I think we can separate ourselves. The resources we have, the NIL resourcing, the player resourcing that I've already mentioned, the alumni base that's deeper than probably any's in the country. It really never ends. The city of Austin in itself, the opportunities you have, the long money, not only in the NFL, but in business, the Macomb School of Business, the education. Nobody can really fuck with Texas. That's why Texas triggers people. That's why Texas threatens people. And the threats are more real than they ever have been. The Texas Longhorns are primed to go chase a national championship this year and many, many other awards amongst players, the team, and what have you. And a lot of guys are going to get drafted and play in the NFL every single year when you come to the University of Texas. Let's move on. Let's talk about Alabama and some other programs for a second. I'm going to talk about Alabama and Ohio State today. Let's start with Alabama. First and foremost, they're not going anywhere. They're recruiting very well. Let's pull up the industry rankings again. I know I mentioned earlier, the rankings in June don't matter. They matter in December. But recruiting in the summertime matters more than ever. This is when you solidify those rankings. They're number 4 at 18 commits, so they have a lot of their class solidified. But they're still recruiting and very well positioned to land some more of the big fish that are uncommitted in the country. With some visits coming up, some visits that have already happened. I mentioned Khalik Lockett earlier. I think they're going to do an excellent job selling the program to him, selling Kalen Deboer's system. I mentioned earlier, Kalen Deboer is like 104-12 as a head coach. He spent the bulk of his career at an NAIA power in Sioux Falls. But I don't give a fuck if he spent the bulk of his career in Pop Warner. 104-12 is 104-12. And he's already proven himself. He just took the University of Washington to the national championship. They beat Texas. He got Michael Penix drafted in the first round of the NFL draft. Rome Odunze in the top 10. And he's going to do shit like that at Alabama the entire time he's there. The only question was, will he recruit at the level that you need to recruit at, like Saban did, and like Ohio State, Texas, Georgia, LSU, Oregon, and others are going to, and the way you're going to need to, not only in the high school rankings, but in the transfer portal rankings. And I think he's already proven he's going to do that. To talk about the transfers, he's always going to be a player because his offense is going to produce first-round players at receiver, quarterback, and along the offensive line. So those three position groups are always going to want to be there. That's a major plus, isn't it? And then their defense hasn't gotten any worse. As long as he makes good hires there, continues to do that, and recruit well on that side, which he will, they're going to be elite on that end. So they're going to be competing for national championships, SEC titles, and be at the top of the recruiting rankings year in, year out. I have very, very high expectations for Alabama. I got their schedule pulled up. And, his defense at Washington was very fucking good with Jabbar Muhammad and them boys. They had good pass rushing. They could stop the run. They were fast. They played very fast and physical. I think that continues. They opened up the season with Western Kentucky. Gonna stomp them, gonna stomp USF. They play Wisconsin. That's an exciting game in Madison, Wisconsin. Luke Fickell, year 2. Who just transferred to Wisconsin at quarterback? Let me see. Did somebody just transfer to Wisconsin? Tyler Van Dyke. Yeah, no, it wasn't tripping. They got Tyler Van Dyke in there. That's interesting. But Wisconsin, Tyler Van Dyke versus Jalen Milroe. We'll see the improvements. Does Jalen Milroe improve in his ability to progress as a passer, to get through his progressions? I think that's the only question going into what Alabama's ceiling this year. Because if he progresses in the mental aspect of the game and just getting through his passing progressions in that Kalen DeBoer offense, then man, Alabama can win the national championship. If not, they can't. But they're still going to be a 10-win team. Georgia, I think they lose this game. Carson Beck, more experience. Georgia's primed to beat them. Georgia lost in the SEC championship game. You got guys like Carson Beck coming back who played well in that game, and then really just Georgia shelled up. Kirby Smart would shell up against Nick Saban. It is what it is. He lost to him all but one or two times, and he just would go into that little shell and get way too safe against Nick Saban. They lost that game. But I think Georgia gets their revenge this year and wins the first Georgia-Bama game in the Kirby Smart, Kalen DeBoer era. Sorry, let me pull up the schedule on the screen for the YouTube watchers. Vanderbilt going to stomp Vanderbilt. It's always funny. I feel like everybody plays Georgia, then they play Vanderbilt. Texas does that too. South Carolina, this could be Beamer's last year there. He's fucking objectively annoying to me. And I just, I don't think it works, but I also don't know what South Carolina is happy with. But I think Bama handles South Carolina. Tennessee's interesting. Is their quarterback humming at that point? Third Saturday in October. Can Tennessee get its second win in 3 years after going all those years getting fucking dominated by Saban? All those coaches that got fired. Josh Heupel, again, Oklahoma, if you're watching. Missouri. Drinkwitz building a hell of a program there. I think Bama should be better. That could be a good game. You got them in Tuscaloosa. Going to Baton Rouge. I think Alabama will run through LSU this year. Not saying it's going to be a blowout game. LSU should be good. They should have weapons. They should have good quarterback play. But, again, their defensive line is not going to hold up against Bama's offensive line. But it is in Baton Rouge, November 9th. Then the late non-conference SEC game against Mercer. They'll beat the piss out of them. They go to Norman, Oklahoma, and are going to drag them. And depending on what Oklahoma is at this point, if Oklahoma has 4 or 5 losses at this point, I don't know the temperature of the program, of the fan base. It could be really, really bad. I think they go to Norman and they just show the difference in national title teams and whatever the fuck Oklahoma is. They beat the shit out of them. And then the Iron Bowl. Auburn's still a year away, but Auburn almost beat them last year. The Iron Bowl's the Iron Bowl, just like Red River's Red River. I know I projected a blowout in Red River, but nobody would be surprised if it's not. Auburn, same way. I think Alabama's a lot better. I think Auburn's still a year away. They need to be good at the quarterback position, but, Hugh Freeze is going to pull out everything he can pull out in that game, and that's going to be fucking exciting. Hugh Freeze versus Kalen DeBoer. I think Kalen DeBoer's better at this point in time. I think most people would say that and take Kalen DeBoer over Hugh Freeze for obvious reasons, but really just schematically and as a coach, I like Kalen DeBoer more. And I think that Alabama wins that, and we'll see. We'll see if the Hugh Freeze experiment works. I originally thought it would, but I think that Alabama hit a home run with Kalen DeBoer. It's important to say that they're not going anywhere. But let's go from one program and one conference and one coach to another, and let's talk about Ohio State, the Big Ten a little bit. The reason I want to talk about this is because I saw Urban Meyer made some comments and Jim Tressel did where they were really calling this the best Ohio State roster in the last 10 years and maybe the best Ohio State roster of all time. Let me pull up some of the best players, and it's fucking loaded. I can't really disagree with it. It is loaded, and obviously the two greatest coaches, arguably, outside of Woody, to coach the Scarlet and Silver Ohio State Buckeyes. Urban Finger Banger Meyer and Jim Tressel both ended in controversy. I wonder if Ryan Day will end the same way. But both of them, they carry a lot of weight within that program and amongst that fan base. And they're putting a lot of pressure on Ryan Day, who has a ton of pressure. And he wears that shit on his sleeve, doesn't he? When he goes fucking ape shit and has a fucking asthma attack, basically, on Lou Holtz because Lou Holtz picked his alma mater to beat him. And he does shit like that. Sensitive cat, looks like a rat, is a rat. But let's go on. Some of the top players at Ohio State, man. It's loaded with the NFL talent. Denzel Burke, maybe the best corner in the country. Travion Henderson, I think, I'm reading the list right here. I'll pull it up on the screen for the YouTube watchers again. It's from an Ohio State website, 11warriors.com. I think Travion is rated too high on this. Very good player. One of the best running backs in the country. Experience, but he's not better than Caleb Downs. Caleb Downs is the best safety in America. Caleb Downs is going to be a top 5, top 10 NFL draft pick 2 years from now. Transfer from Alabama. What a massive get. Ohio State has the best secondary in America. They have maybe the best defense in America. It's really, really good. They got Jack Sawyer coming off the end. And these are all just 5-star, 5-star out of high school, 5-star out of high school in Travion Henderson, 5-star in Caleb Downs, 5-star in Jack Soya, Emeka Egbuka at receiver, 5-star, one of the best receivers in America. They year in, year out have nothing but NFL receivers and typically really, really good quarterback play. As I go down this list, we'll talk about the quarterback and what's interesting about that. They got defensive tackle Tyleik Williams. Always good to have a big, massive, badass defensive tackle. If you're having a good defense, you have to have that. They got it. More help along the defensive line. Quinshawn Judkins has transferred in from Ole Miss at the running back position. He might be better than Travion Henderson. That's why I think that Travion on this list is rated way too high at number 2. Quinshawn is more explosive. Quinshawn had a very explosive year with Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss last year. He transfers to Ohio State. What a get that is, man. They're going to have a really good running game if their offensive line holds up. That's kind of going to be the point to end this discussion. Go on with more cornerback help. Just a loaded fucking secondary. Lathan Ransom coming off an injury. Kid out of Arizona that the Longhorns recruited really hard. Very, very good football player. Had a brutal, gruesome injury last year. Coming off that, I hope he returns very strong. Let's stop going down the list because I think it's 20... a list of 20, their top 20 players. Let's stop at Will Howard. Will Howard being at number 12 is interesting, right? Your quarterback, I think that you typically want him to be better than the 12th best player on your team. And not that this list is just for certain what it is and what it's going to be. I disagree with some of the ordering, but I don't bleed scarlet and silver. So, who knows? But, typically you want, your quarterback to be better than 12th or better than 10th or better than 5th. Oftentimes, the best quarterbacks in the country win the national championships. Look at last year with arguably the best quarterback in the country a year ago with Washington and Michael Penix Jr. And then Michigan with McCarthy. Those are arguably the two most efficient quarterbacks that there were in the country last year. They play for the national championship. Michigan wins it. There's two things that stand out with both of those programs. Really, really good quarterback play. Really, really good offensive line play. That's my question about Ohio State. I know you got weapons fucking galore. I know your defense is going to be unconscious throughout the season. But you don't win championships unless you have really good offensive line play and really good quarterback play. And that has been shaky at Ohio State the last few years. Not at quarterback when they had C.J. Stroud, but along the offensive line. Last year and the last few years, that's where Michigan has whooped their ass when it matters in the second half of a game, along the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. I think Michigan is a team that loses more than one game this year. I think they lose to Texas, and I think they lose to others. I don't know Michigan's schedule. I haven't looked at it yet. I don't know who all they play in conference this year. But I think they'll lose more than one conference game. The only way they beat Ohio State again, which will be DEFCON level 5 in Columbus, Ohio, is if they beat them the same way they beat them. It's going to be the last game of the year. It's going to be cold as fuck. It's going to come down to physicality. And Michigan has probably the best defensive line in America with multiple NFL players on it. If they are able to fuck up not only y'all's running game and offensive line from playing dominant and controlling the game, that's going to disturb Will Howard, the quarterback that you guys are going into the season with. Will Howard last season had 2,600 passing yards, 24 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, and a 75.1 QBR. I think Will Howard is 0-4 against Texas. Maybe he won one game. This isn't a fact-checking podcast, never will be. But Will Howard never gave Texas problems. And he never gave the top teams in the country that he's played against problems. He is a good, above-average quarterback. He is not better. And I understand this is the best roster that he has ever had in his career, but throughout his career, he passed for 2,600 yards. That's by far his best year ever last year. 219 for 357, 61.3 completion percentage, his best ever, his only year ever above 60% completion percentage. I understand Kansas State doesn't major in airing the ball out, but he didn't run all over teams either, okay? 24 touchdowns to 10 interceptions. That's the best season he's ever had. That's not even better than Dylan Gabriel, another old-ass quarterback that should go get a real job. That's not better than him. He's not the best quarterback in the conference. I don't know that he's the second, third, fourth, or fifth best in the conference. The season has to play out. There's some guys starting their first year. Drew Aller could maybe take a step forward. His ceiling's higher than Will Howard. Will Howard's not an NFL quarterback. And I worry you get into games against Michigan, Oregon, with very physical and good NFL type defensive lines that it could really just ruin Ohio State's game plan and what they plan on doing. And if you lose to Michigan another year, if you're not going to beat Oregon, because let me tell you something, Dan Lanning and Oregon are not coming to the Big Ten to take part, they're coming to take over. Okay? Right now, they rank eighth in the On3 recruiting industry rankings, but they only have 9 commitments. They are in the recruitment of damn near every big fish that there is in the country. Any recruitment you see of a 5-star, you damn near see Oregon in it. They got all the Nike money, all the resources. They got a young, hungry, relatable Dan Lanning there leading the way. And going to the Big Ten, which is right there with the SEC and blue blood schools and national championship contending programs. He's going to take over that fucking conference. That's what he's going there to do. That's what he wants to do. It's no more just competing with Michigan anymore. It's no more just beating up on James Franklin at Penn State, beating up on the bad programs like Rutgers. Maybe having a tough game in Wisconsin at Camp Randall. Maybe one of those every single year. Maybe a slip and fall game. But you can deal with it every single year because really Michigan is the only team roster-wise that could compete with what Ohio State was doing. Well, now you got Oregon, now you got USC, now you got Washington over there. Let's see how they compete post Kalen Deboer. But you got other programs that not only will compete in recruiting with you or compete with your roster and your overall physicality of your program, but other coaches that can call plays that's just as good as Ryan Day can call plays. And then there's the Chip Kelly element to where if Ohio State struggles, and by struggle I mean lose 2-3 games, they're one of the best teams in the country. They should be competing for the national championship. Struggle in Columbus, Ohio is just not getting close to the national championship. If you lose your first playoff game or you don't make it to your conference championship or, God forbid, you lose a fourth straight game to Michigan the year after Harbaugh left, what the fuck are we going to do at Ohio State? And do the massive egos of Chip Kelly and Ryan Day ever butt heads? Does that ever come to a point where there's drama in Columbus because of that this season? I don't know. It's interesting, and it's something that I don't think anybody else has been bringing up, and I think it's something that should be brought up for sure. Got the national title odds this year to close out the show. You got Georgia at the top, Ohio State at number 2. That's why I'm closing out with that. Obviously, everybody in the country thinks that they should be competing for the national title and maybe win it. But I got major questions and major positions that I think matter a lot in doing that. And I don't know about the quarterback position. I don't know about the offensive line position. So we'll see. Texas at number 3. That's my pick, obviously. Oregon at plus 1,000. That could be who Texas plays in it. I don't know. I don't think I believe in Dylan Gabriel enough to go to a national championship. But they should be competing for it. Alabama, I just told you what I think about them. Ole Miss, if it's not Georgia or Alabama, that's who's going to be representing the SEC along with Texas, unless there's 3 teams. Ole Miss could win a national championship, man. Ole Miss, I wish I had enough time. Well, fuck it, I do. Just for a little bit. Jackson Dart, year 3, I don't have anything prepped for him, but year 3 under Lane Kiffin, I imagine it's going to be very, very explosive. I'm a massive, massive Lane Kiffin fan. Just a massive Lane Kiffin fan. And you got Ole Miss and LSU tied at plus 1,600. I think that LSU is too high there. Just because of what I said earlier. They're too paper thin on the interior defensive line. They need depth and they need just more talent there. I love Bo Davis just as much as every other guy does. What a fantastic hire that was. I think they made a good defensive coordinator hire. I think they made good hires. Brian Kelly's resume is fantastic and nothing to sneeze at. They're very, very happy with him there in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and amongst that fan base. I think Nussmeier's a great quarterback. But I don't think they should have the 7th best odds to win the national championship because I worry teams like Ole Miss are going to run through them. If they play Ole Miss, do they? I don't know. I don't have their schedule pulled up. Let's pull up LSU's schedule. We got some time. I moved a little faster today than normal. Or LSU. But anyways, Ole Miss is, they're doing great in the transfer market. That's what that program's built to do. They're never going to recruit and have, a top 3, top 5 recruiting class out of high school. Those days and the cheating days are over, and that was really the only way they could do that. Now it's legal for everybody to do what Hugh Freeze and Ole Miss did outside the, sexual shit and the escort stuff, of course. But you can pay players. And so I don't think they're ever going to recruit at the high school rankings, I guess, unless they start winning championships the way Texas, Ohio State, Oregon, and others do. But they will in the transfer market. And I think Lane Kiffin's a guy that can take transfers and quickly, develop a culture with those type of guys, relate to them, and be all fun and good with it. And, it worked really, really well because he's going to get good quarterback play, good play at the line of scrimmage. And if he can have good defensive play, he's going to compete for championships. See. LSU's 2024 schedule. Yeah, they play Ole Miss early in Baton Rouge. And since it's early, I think personally staying in here June 25th, that's a game where where Ole Miss really shows the separation in those two programs. And the only reason I'm even talking about it is because they have the same odds to win the national championship at plus 1,600. I think that's too high for LSU. But Ole Miss is interesting. The defending champs at plus 2,000, Florida State at plus 2,500. So any of these sleeper schools that I could think of, Tennessee is an interesting one. I don't know if they're going to be good enough defensively, but they're interesting if they get the good quarterback play. Notre Dame, not being in a conference, they're not allowed to get a first round bye in the playoffs, but Marcus Freeman, they are very fucking happy with him at Notre Dame. And I think that their quarterback play with the kid that transferred in from Duke, it gets better than what they had last year. I think they have really good quarterback play in the year 3 with Marcus Freeman. I assume they're going to have a really good defense. Penn State's an interesting one, man. Like James Franklin, get on the fucking ball. There was some story like a few weeks ago or a month ago about James Franklin like not being accurate with his injury report or some shit that he could get in trouble for. That smells like Penn State maybe trying to get out of a buyout. You're looking at a conference with teams like Oregon. Obviously, Lincoln Riley and USC have come over. They're at plus 4,000. So they should be. Fuck them. They haven't been able to tackle anybody since Lincoln Riley got there, since Lincoln Riley's been a head coach. So I'm sure they'll get good quarterback play, but they need to figure that out. But you got him in there. You got Oregon in there. You obviously already have Ryan Day. You got Michigan and programs like that. You can't fuck around and just be content with James Franklin never beating any good programs. You got Wisconsin. Is he better than Luke Fickell? I don't think so. So he's got to figure it out, and Drew Aller's got to figure it out. I hope Penn State figures it out. I like Penn State. There's some close associates of mine in my life that went to Penn State, and they love Penn State. So I hope Penn State figures it out. Clemson's fucking dead. They suck. It would take me a full hour show to talk about Dabo Swinney and all the cringy shit he does and just not picking up with the times. You know what I mean? There's 4 programs in the country that didn't take a transfer this year, and this transfer wave, recruiting wave, it's the military schools, Army, Air Force, and Navy, and then Clemson. So that's where Clemson is in fucking college football society right now. They're behind the times. Dabo Swinney's, I guess, the most stubborn coach in America, and it's going to be his demise. The pride comes before the fall. Dabo, you should know that. Tennessee, I'm high on them, high on Missouri. Miami, that's my ACC champion pick. Maybe next college show, I'll do some conference predictions and shit like that. I think they got some sleeper odds on here. Utah at plus 6,000 with a 30-year-old quarterback, the kid that played at Texas 10 years ago, Rising. He fucking was at Texas in 2017. He's definitely at the top of that time to get a real job list of players in college football. I fucking hate that. 6-7 years of playing in college football without like a bunch of catastrophic injuries that allowed you that time of eligibility. Go get a real job. That's crazy. That's crazy. But whatever, I digress. Washington at plus 10,000. Let's see. Colorado at plus 12,000. Yeah, maybe we'll talk about them soon. Who knows? But that's today's college football show. Want to show one more thing before I head out on Texas. If you're watching on YouTube, check this shit out. This is per PFF. Take that for what you will. I like PFF stats. I've seen some of Max Chadwick's list that I don't necessarily agree with. That's neither here nor there. I'm sure he works very hard on them. But this is his position rankings and where Texas ranks going into the country for anybody that wants to poo-poo on Texas or thinks we're overrated. It's not just Texas fans that think Texas is really, really good. Number 3 at the quarterback position, I think that's fucking bananas. We should by far be number 1 with Quinn Ewers, Arch Manning, Trey Owens, Quinn Ewers and Arch Manning are the two best quarterbacks in the SEC for what my fucking money's worth, and they're both on one team. Number 5 at wide receiver, tight end. It could be higher, but he's got him number 5. Number 4 at offensive line. I think everybody else in the country has us number 1 or number 2. So this guy, Max Chadwick, I'm assuming is not a Longhorns fan, right? But we're still top 5 in QB, wide receiver, tight end, and offensive line. So the whole offensive position categories, we're in the top 5 in this guy's list, and in everybody's list I think we're top 5. Number 8 at defensive line, and like I said, the underrated defensive back room. Number 6 he has us at. I think everybody's got us in the top 10 that I've seen in the DB room. Most people got us number 1 at QB. I got us number 1. I've seen us as far as the top 3 in the receiver room, but top 5's fine. 5's fine. We got some transfers that are starting, a bunch of new starters. We should be 1 or 2 at offensive line. That's fucking ridiculous. Number 8, defensive line, that's fair, but I think we got some fucking hog mollies and some dogs coming off the edge this year. And then number 6, a defensive back. So, and the linebacker, I don't know why he didn't rank linebacker or put that on the graphic, but I imagine we're top 5, top 10 in the linebacker room. So on every position group, I think personally the Texas Longhorns, and I think other people think that the Texas Longhorns are top 10 in every single position category in America. So if you're an A&M fan, if you're an Oklahoma fan, if you're somebody that doesn't like Texas, if you're somebody that's threatened by Texas and or thought Texas would never quote unquote be back, those days are fucking over. And the Longhorns are primed and ready to take over college football or be one of the teams that are up there doing so. So that's the first college football show of the Shonee Jackson show. Today is Tuesday, June 25th. I will be releasing the NFL Pro Show today, which is technically episode 1 on my YouTube channel. Please like and subscribe. Follow the YouTube channel. Follow me on the show, the socials, especially Twitter at Shonee Jackson. I'm electric on Twitter. You'll see a lot of my personality there. My sense of humor. This is going to be a sports show where I talk about obviously a lot of football, my favorite teams. I'll talk about the NBA, MLB, whatever else, trending topics in the world, give you my sense of humor. It's been pretty serious so far, but I'll joke a lot. This isn't about being right, wrong. It's about having a good time, giving my perspective as a fan of sports and throughout 27 years of life so far. What I think I articulate things in a way that's interesting, fun to listen to. If you fuck with it, if you agree with me, please like, subscribe, follow me on all the socials. I love you guys more than you know, but not as much as you think. God bless and have a great day.